So thank you everyone who is joining us here today for our training on Find More Illinois. This is a pretty small group here, so make sure that if you have questions as we go through the webinar that you pop them into the chat, or even feel free to just unmute yourself and ask your questions out loud. So here's the agenda for our session today. We're going to start with a brief overview of the project, and then we'll talk about the Find More Illinois workflow at a high level. The main focus of today's session is to learn how to search and place requests in the Find More Illinois interface, both as a patron and as a staff member. So we're going to spend the bulk of our time going through those tasks. I will say for this group, if you're interested in the more in-depth review of that interlibrary loan workflow, we do have some hands-on training for interlibrary loan staff and other staff who will manage the process of receiving, shipping, and returning Find More Illinois interlibrary loans. So you can register for those upcoming sessions on L2. As time allows today, I think we should have plenty of time built in today's session. We'll end with a Q&A period, but again, you do not have to wait until the end of the webinar to ask a question. Feel free to pop your questions into the chat as you have them, or again, like I said, unmute yourself to ask a question as well. Kiara and I are going to be trading off monitoring the chat as we go along. So just before we really jump in here, I just want to introduce ourselves. So my name is Deborah. I am the Director of Member Services at CCS. So I know many of you who are here in this meeting today. So thank you again for coming. I also have with me today Kiara Lyons from CCS. She is our Member Services Associate. So she has been helping out with leading Find More Illinois training and providing support to all of our members as they're going live. We also have here today with us from Rails, Eric Bain. Eric has been instrumental in our launching of Find More Illinois this year. He is the expert on all things Find More and Share It. So Eric has been helping us out with our training sessions and providing lots of guidance and support as we kind of continue on our Find More Illinois journey. So Eric is here to help us out answering questions that all of you might have during today's demo. So thank you, Eric, for being here. So let's go ahead and review the project at kind of a high level. I think most of you who are here are already familiar with Find More Illinois, but we'll go through the basics just in case you're not. So Find More Illinois is a statewide resource sharing platform that is currently managed by Rails. The Find More Illinois project was started back in 2018, and any Illinois library can join Find More Illinois. Find More Illinois currently uses Autographic's Share It software, and patrons and staff can log into Share It to place and manage interlibrary loan requests. Those filled requests are then delivered to the pickup location through Rails delivery. There are currently about 60 libraries participating in Find More, though this number is actually probably out of date at this point. When CCS finishes our implementation, that number will be over 90. So currently, Find More Illinois is primarily made up of public libraries, though there are a handful of academic libraries, school libraries, and special libraries currently participating. You can view the complete list of all the Find More members online, and we will pop that link into the chat. So thank you, Kiara. CCS Governing Board voted to join Find More Illinois as a full consortia back in November. So this was a project we took to them to discuss and vote. So we have committed to participating in Find More Illinois through June 2026. So we're going to be Find More members for a period of at least 2 years, at which time we'll evaluate the program and decide if we want to continue on again as a full consortia, or if we want libraries to individually make that decision. So most CCS members will be launching the program from May through August of this year. We currently have 9 libraries that are live on Find More. They went live in early May through June. You can find the full schedule of every library's launch date on the CCS website, and Kiara is going to pop that into the chat just in case you don't know your library's specific launch date. We do have a couple of exceptions to the May through August launches that I just want to bring to the group's attention. Highland Park and Northbrook will not launch Find More until January 2025. And then our 2 newest members, Mont Prospect and Waukegan, we're going to give them a whole year to get settled into CCS things before, again, they launch the program in October of 2025. But the remaining, how many is that? The remaining 27 CCS libraries will all fully be on Find More by the end of August. So Find More provides several benefits to both CCS and that larger library community in Illinois. So first, it provides our patrons with greater access to materials owned by other Illinois libraries. And then in return, we can easily share our collections with those libraries that are participating in the program. The software used by Find More integrates with Polaris in a really seamless manner, which helps to streamline that borrowing and lending experience for both patrons and for staff. So let's dive into the workflow for borrowing and lending materials through Find More. So in Find More, your library will both borrow and you'll lend materials. In today's webinar, we're really focusing on the borrowing side or the requesting side of using Find More. So in Find More, the borrowing library is the library that's borrowing materials on behalf of their patrons or staff. So sometimes we also call this the requesting library. The lending library is the library that's sending materials to the borrowing library to fill a request. So again, participating in Find More, sometimes your library will be the borrower receiving items from other libraries, and sometimes your library is the lender, where you're sharing out your materials with other Find More libraries. Now, a few vocabulary words that I think will come in handy as we move through today's webinar. First, we have ShareIt. I mentioned this a couple slides ago, but ShareIt is the software that powers Find More Illinois. So today, Kiara and I will be demonstrating how to search and place holds in, again, that ShareIt software. Autographics is the company behind that ShareIt software. So we and Rails have worked really closely with Autographics on setup and configuration as we prepared to launch all of our libraries. So again, ShareIt is the software and Autographics is that company that puts out the software itself. NCIP is a word that you might hear us mention. NCIP is a communication protocol that allows ShareIt and Polaris to connect to and talk to each other. So this NCIP connection is what is responsible for, again, the streamlined communication between our two systems. If you attend the interlibrary loan training, you really get to see that NCIP connection in action. Z3950 is one more term that might be helpful to know. It's a different kind of communication protocol that allows the ShareIt software to kind of do real-time searching at each Find More Illinois library's database to make sure it has up-to-date information on item availability. So you'll see this a little bit later in the demo, but essentially when a hold request is placed through Find More, the software sends out a call to each library's database to make sure, again, it has that item available. So let's jump into that ShareIt or Find More Illinois workflow. Today's session is going to focus specifically on searching and placing requests, but it is really helpful to kind of see that big picture of the whole process. The first step to initiating a request in ShareIt is to search for a title in the ShareIt interface. When you or a patron find the title that you're looking for, you'll log in and you'll place a hold on that title, again, in ShareIt. On the back end, once a request is placed, ShareIt will identify a lending library that has a copy of that title available. The title will then be placed on that library's pick list to be pulled. The lending library, again, that library that's been marked to supply the request, will pull the item from their shelves. They'll mark the item as shipped in ShareIt, and then they'll place the item in Rails delivery. The item will go on its way to that borrowing library through Rails delivery until it arrives at the borrowing library's location. At that point, the borrowing library will receive the item and ShareIt, and then they'll place it on the hold shelf for their patron. The patron will be notified that they have a request that's ready to pick up. They'll come into the library, they'll check out the item, and then they'll return it to the library when they're finished. When the item is returned, the borrowing library will return the item through ShareIt, and then they'll place that item back in Rails delivery to be returned to the lending library. When the item arrives back at the lending or owning library, it'll be checked in and then placed back on that library's shelf. So the workflow works very much like intra-CCS lending does, with the difference being that several of the tasks happen in the ShareIt software. I'm going to pause and see if any questions came in. Doesn't look like it, so we'll keep moving on. So let's dive into how staff and patrons can search for and request materials in ShareIt. Each library, each CCS library, will have their own unique ShareIt site and URL. CCS will add links to your Power Pack for you that will direct patrons to the ShareIt interface. And you'll see a demonstration of that in just a minute when Kiara shows you how to search in the catalog. And then libraries can also add links to your website if you'd like, to again, give another access point for your patrons to get to Find More Illinois. So I'm going to pass it over to Kiara now, who is going to walk you through searching.
All right, hello everyone. As Deborah said, I'm going to walk us through searching. Deborah, can you see my screen?
I can see your screen now. It looks like it was bopping back and forth between maybe a Word document and your browser, but right now it looks good.
We see Cary Area Public Library?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So as Deborah said, I will go over how our patrons will gain access to ShareIt and how they'll log in, search, and place requests through Find More Illinois. So let's begin by getting to ShareIt. Your patron may get to ShareIt a few different ways. They can get to ShareIt to their specific ShareIt site from our library's catalog, or they might find it on the Find More Illinois website. Today, we're going to get there from our catalog. So we are going to be working on Cary Area's Public Library's training catalog. A few ways that we can get to Find More Illinois' ShareIt page. First off, you can select to have a tab on your page. As you can see here, it says Find More Illinois. And if your patrons were to click on that, it would direct them directly to their ShareIt page. Other libraries have chosen to add a link to their existing dashboard. So right over here, some libraries have a Can't Find a dashboard, and that's also another great place to include that Find More Illinois link. If your library would like either of those options, just let CCS staff know and we can help configure those into your Power Pack. Another way for patrons to get to the ShareIt page is from your catalog through this handy redirect option when they search for something that comes up with a no results page. Let's take a look at that together. So let's say our patron is searching for how to read better and faster by Norman Lewis. All right, so as we can see, let's go back to Carrie. So as you can see, we have been redirected to the sorry, no results were found page. But now our patrons have the option to click on this beautiful Find More Illinois icon that will take them directly to their Share It page. So if I click on that, we can now see that we have been redirected to the Share It interface. We can also see that Share It took the search terms we were looking for in the pack and initiated the search here. So it automatically pulls up the search item. We're going to focus in on our search results just for a moment and then we'll come back to it. But first I want us to notice a few things here. We can see the title, we see the author that we pulled in, and we have 3 columns here. We have format, and we can see the formats of this item that are available. So we have book. If we click down, we can see the institution that owns this. So we can see that the University of Illinois Chicago owns this item. There are 3 copies owned, and we could see like the availability of them. We also have this request option. So here we would typically have a little icon. And when this icon appears, it means that that the format has a single record associated with them, and it's nice and easy to click request. Notice that this one does not have the icon, and it just means that there are multiple records rolled into one. And for those, you would just select this item and choose the one that you are looking for. Typically, this means that they have a different publication date or a different publisher, and it's just a place for you to make sure that you're requesting the correct item. I'm going to step away from taking a look at our results for now and look at our Share It interface as a whole. So moving from left to right, up at the left, we have our library's name. If your patron was directed here from their library catalog, this will automatically appear as their library's name or logo. Next, we have the search bar right here in the middle so that patrons can search directly on Share It. To the left of this, we have the index that your patron can search by. So we expect most patrons to search by all fields option, but if they wanted to, they could decide to search by title, author, ISBN, and so on. To the left of that, we have our languages. Your patron can select whichever language they are most comfortable searching in. To the right of our search bar, we have the advanced search option. In advanced search, your patron can decide to search with more advanced filters. We expect most patrons to just search from the search bar directly, but this is a really good resource for any of our extra savvy searchers. To the right of our search bar, we have the Hello Guest, please log in. When it's time for logging in, your patron will be able to select here. I'll go into that more in a little bit, but just as a little preview, patrons will be logging in to Share It using their Polaris library card and their Polaris PIN number. But for now, let's jump back into searching and reviewing results on Share It. All right. Because we are on a live site, I will be practicing placing requests with an FMI test record. So I will search for FMI test and press enter. And so we have our results populated on this screen. There are a few ways that I want to review on how we can organize these results. On the left, we see, very similar to what we see on the Power Pack, we have some filters. We are able to choose the format, the author, title, just different ways that our patrons can make sure that they're finding the correct item that they're looking for. To the right of our screen, right below that Hello Guest, please log in, we have a few ways that we can choose to view our results. So starting off by group, By default, Share It is rolling up similar records that you can choose to sort with either no grouping, you can choose to cluster title and authors together, and you can choose to merge title, author, publisher, date. Next, we can choose the way that we sort our information. So by default, we're at relevance, but patrons can choose to sort by title or by author. Patrons can also decide how many results they'd like to see at once on their page. So default is 40, but you can go up to 100 results per page. And lastly, patrons can change their view of the results. So currently we're on the list view. If we scroll, we're just viewing the list, but we can also change it to this grid gallery view. And patrons can look through the results in this way. I prefer list view, so we're going to jump back to that. And let's focus in on our results. So let's say that I am looking to request a hold for FMI test COCO. Few things to notice here. I can ensure that I'm looking at the right thing by looking at the title, looking at the author right below it. There is an image for items that are real. And then onto the side, we have 3 columns. Again, we have that format that tells us what kind of format we're looking at. When something like, let's say a title like Pride and Prejudice has a book and a movie, you might see book, movie, audiobook, all listed in this area. Then we have the request button right next to it. So whenever we say, yep, this is what I want, I'm ready to request it, you would click this button. And to the right of the request button, we have the list option. When your patron logs in, they'll be able to save, print, or email this title and any other that they've shared to their lists on Share It. So once we've confirmed what we're looking for, let's say we do want this FMI test COCO, we will be able to click this request button. Now, by clicking on that request icon, your patron has been prompted to log into their Share It account. If your patron was redirected from their home library catalog, again, this select your library should just auto-populate with their library's name. If not, then they'll just need to open this dropdown and find their library. Something to note is any CCS patron will be able to log into any CCS Share It site. However, we've blocked reciprocal patrons and CPL patrons from being able to log into our Share It sites. So again, we're working on carry, so we'll select that. Your barcode will be your patron's library card number. So very easy, they don't need to memorize a new username or barcode. They'll just type in their library card number. And their PIN, again, will be the same thing as their Polaris library account password. So typically that's the last 4 digits of their phone number. And once they have all that information in, they can press submit and they will log into their Share It account. All right, so now that we've logged in, it's time to place a request on Share It. We've been redirected to this returnable loan page, and let's walk through it together. It's fairly simple, and patrons shouldn't need to input too much information in this form, but there are some places that might require them to add some stuff. So first of all, patrons will select their Deliver to library. We currently only have a few CCS libraries live in Findmore, Illinois, so for now, we will have this option blocked. So as you can see, I'm not allowed to select, so that they only are able to select from their live library. Once all libraries are live, though, they'll be able to use this drop-down to select other libraries as their pickup location. So again, this is a test record, so we don't see too many details or real details listed here, but in a real request, the record and its information will auto-populate, complete with title, author, publisher, physical description, and ISBN. This is pulled directly from that record that we selected earlier, so our patrons will not need to manually input anything and can simply confirm that they're requesting the correct item here. So like I said, while most information is auto-populated, there are a few places that may require patron input. The first one is volumes needed. So if a patron is requesting an item that has multiple volumes, say like a manga, this is where they would need to include which volume they would want. Under that, we have the need by date, and this is also a place where patrons may need to make some changes. If they are requesting an item and have a quicker turnaround or need a quicker deadline, they can request an item on a different date. This is useful if they need it sooner, or even if they can wait for an item and request it later. But note that patrons will not be able to set a need by date that is shorter than 7 days. Because we are logged in, we've used our Polaris information to get onto our shared account. This patron information section has also been auto-populated, meaning that your patron will not need to add their last name, first name, library card number, contact information. That's already all there. Lastly, if a patron has any notes that they would like to include for the lending library, they can include that for patron notes. It's not required, but if they have something like they're requesting a book because of a book club and they need an extended deadline, they might say, I need this for 6 weeks. And they can submit that request and see if there's a lending library that can accommodate that. And that's it for submitting a request on ShareIt. Once you are ready, you've confirmed that all of the information is set, your patron will press submit at the bottom right hand. It's going to take ShareIt just a second, and we will get this confirmation that says that our ILL request has been submitted. Your patron can choose to print this if they're at the library and they would like a record of this. Staff can help them print this and make sure that they have access to it. And they can press OK. So now that we've officially requested a hold, we can check our account status at the upper right-hand corner where we see our name. So it says, hello, FMI. We're going to click on your account and come down to your items from other libraries. This is where the items that we have requested and their status will appear. So we just requested Coco, and it's going to take a few minutes for ShareIt to have it pop up, but then you will be able to see the item you've requested and the status. If your patron wants to know how many requests they're able to submit at once, you'll be able to see that at the left hand of this page. So as you can see, I have submitted 1 request and I may submit 9 additional requests, meaning that Cary Area Public Library has set their settings to 10 total requests per patron. Each library was able to choose this amount, so it will vary by location. And that is how patrons would search and place requests on the ShareIt site. It should feel very simple, hopefully, but I'm going to pause here for any questions and I can review any of those steps. So please feel free to come off mute or drop it in the chat if you have questions.
So Kiara, we do have one question in the chat from Tammy from Grace Lake. She says that she noticed that volumes is plural and is asking if multiple volumes can be selected in one submission. And so the answer to that, Tammy, is no, that only a single item can fill a single request. Eric, I'm going to look to you just to confirm that that answer is right.
That's right, Deborah, with the exception of the multi-copy request available to staff.
So Tammy, you are the first eagle-eyed staff member to notice that that is plural and not singular. So we will look into whether or not we can change that wording on the form, because I do think that could be a point of confusion for patrons. So thank you so much for mentioning that.
Do we see any more questions?
That is the only question so far in the chat, Kiara.
Perfect. Right, Deborah, if you're ready, I'll pass it over to you.
All right. Okay, Kiara, can you just give me a verbal that you can see my screen?
I can see your screen.
Perfect. Okay, so Kiara walked you through the ShareIt interface from the patron side and how to log in and place requests. So I'm going to walk you through how staff will log in and place requests on behalf of patrons. So I am currently in the Wilmette Sherrod site. We can see Wilmette's library's name up in the upper left-hand corner. See a chat. Ooh, that's a great question from Joanne. So I'm going to pause quickly just to answer this one. Joanne asks, can a patron see Find More Illinois requests in their Polaris account? And the answer to that is initially no, but yes when the item is received. So when a patron places a request through ShareIt or a staff member places a request on behalf of a patron, until that item arrives at their library and is received, they will not be able to see that in their Polaris account. That information will only live in Find More. Once the item is received, then that request is transferred over to Polaris and patrons will be able to see that title in their either list of hold requests or in their list of checked out materials. So we're going to walk through a little bit later in the demo of how staff can check Find More for more details on a patron's Find More request. But as Kiara did show, patrons can log into Find More and view their requests through their account here as well. That is a great idea, though. I really wish that that hold would display in Polaris right from the start, but unfortunately it does not appear until that item has arrived. That's a great question. Keep the questions coming in the chat. Kiara and I are keep an eye on them as we go through. So I'm going to go ahead and log into ShareIt now as a staff member. So any staff member that is accessing ShareIt with a staff login is going to use an individual username and password that has been set up by either Rails or CCS staff. So your library submitted a list of staff users to CCS a couple of months ago, but we've been adding additional staff as needed when a library requests them. So we are requiring individual staff usernames to access ShareIt because once you're logged in as a staff member, you do have access to patron information within the ShareIt module. So it's our best practice for both privacy and security to require individual logins, again, when staff are accessing patron information. So I'm going to click this login link in the upper right-hand corner. Staff will log into ShareIt on the same login screen as patrons do. So when I'm logging in with my staff account, I want to make sure that I am picking my library from the drop-down list. It should default to your library as long as you are, again, in your library's ShareIt site. In the barcode field, rather than enter in my library card number, I'm going to enter in my staff username, which for most staff is their first initial and their last name. And then I'm going to enter in my staff password. So your staff login, your staff credentials, they are only valid at your library's ShareIt site. So you cannot log into a different ShareIt library with your staff credentials. So again, here I'm logged in as Wilmette. I've entered in my staff username and my staff my staff password, and I am going to click Submit. So once I click Submit, I will be logged into ShareIt as a staff member. So much of the screen that you'll see is the same. We can see I have the same menu bar up at the top with the same search box. However, you can see that I now have access to a staff dashboard. So the main users of staff functions within ShareIt are going to be your interlibrary loan staff, and we'll go really in detail on all of those staff functions in the in-person ILL training. Today, I'm going to give you just a brief overview of some of those features. So your staff dashboard is accessible through this link in the menu up at the top left. Within your staff dashboard, you have access to your quick links for ShareIt. Quick links are shortcuts to different modules within ShareIt, some of the most popular modules within the tool. So you can update your quick links under this heart menu that lives in the upper right-hand corner of the interface. So if you click that heart in the upper right-hand corner, you will be able to delete some of the existing quick links. You can rearrange them if you would prefer to move a different module up to number 1. So you have some flexibility there to customize your own staff interface. If you want, you can add additional elements to your quick links by clicking the plus sign to the right of that link. Next to your quick links, you have your ILL admin menu. So this is where the bulk of your interlibrary loan settings and tasks live. We're going to come back to this ILL admin menu in just a bit. You can see here, I have also access to a module called User Admin. You will not see this when you log in to share it with your credentials. This is where CCS staff have the permission to add new users and modify existing users' passwords. So if you ever forget your staff password, you can open a ticket and CCS will reset that for you. Next, we have our statistics module. This is where you can go to run basic kind of canned reports like activity and request reports. So if you need some stats for your monthly report on your activity in Find More Illinois, this is where you would go to run those reports. And finally, we have the support module, which is where you can access user guides and documentation for ShareIt that have been created and provided by Autographics. So I do want to go back to this ILL admin menu, but first we are going to walk through how to search and place requests as a staff member, because it is a little bit different from placing requests as a patron. The searching part as a staff member is essentially the same as you saw Kiara demo just a few minutes ago. The biggest difference when it comes to searching as a staff member is that you have some expanded search options when it comes to which fields you want to search by. So for example, now that we are logged in as a staff member, we can search by OCLC number, we can search by the Autographics control number, and so on. So again, staff just have a few additional search indices that they can search by here. Let me go ahead and just initiate a search. As Kara mentioned, this is currently a live environment, so I'm going to make sure I'm only testing with test records created by our team or by Rails. So I'm going to search just for FMI test, and I'm going to tap my enter key to launch that search. So this screen, once I've searched, looks exactly the same as the screen that Kiara showed you a few minutes ago. So let's say I am looking through my list of search results and my patron wants to request this title, FMI test cars and trucks. So here, as a staff member, I can click this request button to begin to place the request on behalf of my patron. So, because I'm logged in as a staff member and not with my own personal card, I am taken to this ShareIt lookup tool. So this is the screen that I will use to search for the patron that I want to place the request for. So what I'm going to do is I'll type in the patron's library card number or their barcode, and then I will initiate my search. Now you'll notice here that in addition to a barcode field, I also have this and blank field. In ShareIt, you do have the option to search by a few additional fields in the patron record, but we don't recommend this at this time because these fields are not indexed for a given patron until they've actually logged into the ShareIt interface themselves. So if I've never logged into the ShareIt site before, you would not be able to search by my name, my address, or my email address. So at this time, we don't really recommend searching that way. We definitely recommend searching by barcode because whether or not the patron has ever accessed ShareIt before, you will be able to search them through that field. So I'm going to type in my test barcode into this barcode field, and then I'm either going to tap the Enter key on my keyboard or click this blue search button. So once I've initiated that search for this patron's barcode, hopefully you will see a result pop up below that search screen. So here's my patron that I would like to place this request for. So all I have to do is just click their information in the search results. Once I select the correct patron from the list, it will bring up the returnable request screen. Again, this looks really similar to what we saw before from placing the request from the patron side, with a few differences for staff. The first thing I'll want to do is, as a staff member, select the borrower for the request. So the borrower is also the pickup location. So in my example, I am logged in at Wilmette. So for my pickup location, I will pick Wilmette from this drop-down list. And this drop-down list does contain a list of all CCS libraries at this time. We'll want to make sure, though, staff are only selecting the libraries that are live as pickup locations, again, until everyone has launched. After you've selected the pickup location, there's an optional internal staff note field. So if you need to pop in a note for, let's say, your ILL team, you can go ahead and you can do that in this field. This staff note will only appear to other staff at your location when they've logged into ShareIt. Now, just like with the patron request, we can see that all of the information about the title is already populated. So it's being pulled in from that bibliographic record. This is just a test record, so there's not real information here, but for legitimate titles, you'll see information like ISBN, author, and so on. Again, just like with patrons, we have a field to input the volume that the patron needs. So if this was a multi-volume title, we could put in volume 8 if that is the one the patron was requesting. We can modify the need by date. It's set to a default of 21 days, but if the patron has no rush, you can extend that need by date longer, or again, if they're in a hurry, you can bump that need by date up shorter. Note that the request will expire once the need by date is passed. Because we picked the patron on the previous screen, we'll see the patron's information populating these patron fields here. Now, if we realize that we perhaps selected the wrong patron, picked the wrong account, we do have the option to use the patron lookup tool again to correct our mistake and select the right patron. Now, moving down here, as a staff member, you will also see a field for borrower's notes. Now, this is where you would put in any special requests that you might want to share with potential lending libraries. So here, I might, let's say the patron says that they need this book for 2 months. You could pop in a note here that says patron needs the item until September 1. And again, this note will display to any potential lenders. The ship to information is already populated because you selected your library as the borrower. Your library's information will automatically be filled out here. And once you've reviewed your details, everything looks correct, you can click that submit button. Once you click that submit button, ShareIt will place that request, and you'll see this confirmation window pop up, confirming again that that request has been placed. So then this request is now in the hands of interlibrary loan staff. ShareIt will place this request on a library who has a copy available. It'll place that request on their pick list to be pulled, and hopefully they will be able to send this item or an item to fill the request on its way to your library. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK here and pause to see if there are any questions on placing requests as a staff member.
No questions
I
in the
s-
chat yet.
No questions? All right, you're saving them all for the end. I like it. All right, so that was how to place a request for a single copy for a patron. I hope you felt that that was very simple and streamlined and easy. It's a pretty simple workflow. But I also want to show you how to place a multi-copy request if needed for, let's say, a book club. So only staff can place requests for multiple copies. Patrons are not able to do that on their own. So let's say our book club or a book club is reading the book Legendborn. I'm going to type in my search term in the search box and click that search button to initiate my search. So here I see I have several results for Legendborn. I have the first book here in multiple formats, as well as that second book in the series. So let's say I want the first book and I want the book format. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click into all of the records that have the format of book. So I can see that there are in ShareIt 3 different records for Legendborn. And when I'm looking at which one to place my request on, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to place the request on the one that has the most copies. So it looks like this second result has 36 copies owned. So now if I only wanted a single copy, I would click this request button here. But let's say my book club needs 6 additional copies beyond what I'm able to get through CCS. So instead of clicking that request button, I'm going to click the book jacket or the book cover. When I click the book cover, it opens up like the full display for this record. So at the top or center of the screen, you're going to see a list of all of the libraries and copies that are owned on this record across ShareIt. So you'll see CCS libraries if they own it. You'll also see other Find More libraries listed here. To place a multi-copy request, it's kind of buried here, but that option exists here on your left-hand side under multi-copy. So again, the normal request this item button is for when you want to place a single request or a request for a single copy. But here we also have the option to request multiple copies. So I'm going to click multi-copy. Once I click multi-copy, we are going to be prompted to enter in a patron account to place the request for. So just like I did when I was requesting a single copy, I need to select the patron who I'm placing the request for. So sometimes you might be placing, let's say, a request for one of your book club cards. So you would type in that account's barcode here. I'm just going to use one of my test accounts. I'm going to type in the barcode and I'll click search. Once I've clicked search, I should see the matching patron account for that barcode. And I'll go ahead and I'll select that account. I wanted to do this to show you what will happen if you or a patron attempts to request an item that is owned by your library. You will see this prompt come up letting you know this item is owned. Do you want to continue or do you want to cancel? In the case of a patron will not be able to move forward. They cannot place a request on a title owned by your library or by any library in CCS. So if a patron was to meet this screen, they would kind of have to stop here. But as a staff member, you are able to click through to continue to place a request. And in the case of a book club, that makes sense because maybe your library owns 1 copy, but you need 10 for a book club. So once I click through that screen, you can see something new up here at the top of your request screen. You will see that ShareIt is kind of like searching for copies across all of the Find More membership. So what ShareIt is doing here is it's conducting a Z3950 search. So it's like connecting to each library's individual database, and it is sending out a call to see if that library has a copy available. So I can see here, currently ShareIt has found 38 potential lenders. I'm just going to go ahead here and click stop because I only want 6. I do not need 30. I do not need more than 38. So in my returnable request form, I will again need to pick the borrower. So the borrower is going to be your library, the library that will be the pickup location for these materials. Same as with the other form, I can input an internal staff note that will be seen only by my library staff in ShareIt. We have all of the title information completed for this title. This is being pulled in from that record. So we have ISBN, we have author, publisher, and so on. Again, if this was a multi-volume record and we needed a specific volume, we would enter that in the volumes needed field. Then we have our need by date. Let's say maybe this book club, isn't meeting till October, so we don't need the book until August 15th. This is a new field, the lender list. This lender list is a list of every single library in ShareIt that had a copy of this title on the shelf when ShareIt did its Z3950 check. So you don't need to modify the lender list here. ShareIt will choose which libraries to send the request to first. I know that in OCLC, libraries have to build out a lender list. Again, you don't need to do that here. ShareIt has already done that for you. So then we've already selected our patron's library card number, so that information is already populated. And then because this is a multi-copy request, we need to specify how many copies we need. So let's say for this book club, I need 6 copies. I'm going to input that number into the number of copies needed field. So what will happen when I click submit is that ShareIt will place 6 separate requests for this title for this patron account. So then in the borrower's notes, I'm going to say need until October 15th. That's actually very far away. I don't know why I put it that late, but you can put in your notes for the potential lenders to review and either accept or deny based on your request. The ship to name is already populated based on the pickup location I selected earlier. So then at this point, you would go ahead and you would click submit to place the request. I am not going to click submit here because I don't want to create 6 requests for Legendborn, so I am going to click cancel. But that is how you would, if needed, place multi-copy requests for your patrons or for your book clubs. So I'm going to pause and see if there are any questions. All right, I don't see any in the chat, but if you have some, feel free to just type them up there and we will answer them. Oh, I saw one. Joanne asks, is the patron's contact info has changed? Do they need to share in Polaris and Find More is updated? That is a really good question. Let's go ahead and walk through this request screen again. Absolutely, if the patron's contact info has changed, we should update their info in Polaris just to make sure that that is all up to date. But if I go back to the request to screen, the patron's contact info is editable here in Find More. So you can change their contact information for a given request. Let's just say, our email's changed to ccslib.gov. I can go ahead and I can change that information here in this form and click submit. However, that won't be transmitted back to Polaris, so you'll also need to make that change in their Polaris account or advise them to do so on their own in PowerPack. So again, you can change the contact information here, but we recommend you would also change it in Polaris just so it's correct for next time. So that was a good question. So priority is CCS. Joanne, do you mean is the priority to fix it in the database? I would say the priority is definitely just to fix it in Polaris. But again, if you need to make a tweak in Find More, you can just do it right on that request form. But changes you make to their contact info on a single request form won't make it back into our CCS database. So you can help them make that adjustment. Again, just so it's right for the next time. And I will say through the patron will be sent the notification through our Polaris database, not through ShareIt. So it is really important, again, that that change is made on the Polaris side. So when it comes time, when the item arrives and they'll be sent an email notice or a phone notice, we want to make sure that their info is correct on the Polaris side so that they can get notified that it's ready for them to pick up. So we mentioned earlier, thanks to Joanne's great question, that the patron's request will not show up on the Polaris side until the item has arrived at your library and has been received. At that point, the item will be trapped, it will be put on hold for the patron, and then they'll check it out. But what if a patron wants to get an update on the request and it hasn't arrived at the library yet? That information will not live on the Polaris end, so staff will need to check ShareIt for an update for the patron. So there are a couple of easy ways for staff to do that in ShareIt under that ILL admin menu I mentioned before. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open my staff dashboard back up. I'm going to pause to take a drink of water really quickly. Hold on. All right, a lot of talking today. So here we are back in our staff dashboard, and let's take a look at this ILL admin menu. So in the ILL admin menu, you have links to a few tools and search options that can help you navigate, that can help you find more information about your patron's request. So we have the request manager, and then we have a few options to view and search through your borrower requests and your library's lender requests. So just a reminder, borrower is where your library is the borrowing library. One of your patrons or one of your staff members are borrowing an item from a different library. Lender is where your library is sending out one of your items to another Find More Illinois location. So borrower, you're getting an item sent to you, and then lender, you're sending an item out to someone else. So let's start by looking at the request manager. Again, I was under my staff dashboard, my ILL admin, and then my request manager. Your request manager is the location where your ILL staff will be completing the bulk of their work in Find More. So they're going to get like a full breakdown of what to do with all of the information you see here. But today I'm going to give you just a quick overview. Your request manager is split into two sides. We have the manage borrower request side, and then we have the manage lender request side. So we've got, again, the left is all of the requests where your library is the borrower, and then the right would display any requests in which your library has lent out one of your copies to a different Find More library. So let's look at the borrowing side. Each request in Find More has a status assigned to it based on where it is in that overall Find More workflow that we walked through in the beginning. So a request that is waiting for the lending library to pull an item, that request has a status of pending because it is pending another library pulling that item and sending it to you. So it's like it's waiting for it to be filled. A request that has been shipped to your library will have a request status of shipped. That one's pretty self-explanatory. And then an item that has arrived at your library has a request status of received. So you can click into kind of each of these statuses that are hyperlinked, and they're hyperlinked because you have a request that matches that status. You can click into any of these request statuses to view a list of requests, again, that match that status. So let's say I want to look at a list of my library's shipped requests. I can click into the shipped status, and I can view all of the requests that have that status. Again, a shipped request is a request that's currently in transit to my location. Now, if I needed to view more information about this particular request for Frozen, I could simply click the title, and this would take me into that full request record. So here I can see the barcode of the item that was sent, the date that the request was submitted, the date that the request was shipped, the date that the item will be due once the patron checks it out. If I scroll down, I can see the library that is the lender, so the library that is sending the copy to my location. I can see the patron who placed this request, and I can see their library card number, their name, and their contact information. So there's some really good information here in this request record. At the bottom, I can also see some basic history about this request. So I can see when the request was placed and which staff member placed it. In this instance, it was me. I placed the request. And we can see which staff member at the lending library marked the request as shipped. So it's nice just to be able to view that history in case there's an issue and you want to see what happened and when it happened. So I'm going to close this window to get back to my request manager. So you can use Request Manager to view your requests that are in different statuses. But what do you do if you don't know which status a request is in and a patron, wants to know what's going on with this item? Instead of looking kind of through each status in your Request Manager, a really handy tool are some of your borrower search options. If I open up my ILL admin menu, going back to my borrower reports, I can browse through a list of all of our borrower requests. I can either kind of browse by title or choose to browse by patron. So again, I'm in my ILL admin menu. I am under my borrower options. I'm going to click Title Browse. My borrower title browse is going to display a list of all of the outstanding borrower requests for my library. So again, these are a list of all of the items that have been requested by my library's patrons. So if I have a patron who is looking for an update on one of their requests, I can look through this list. At this moment, it's pretty short because Wilmette isn't live yet, so these are a bunch of test requests. Let's say my patron wants that update on Frozen. I can find the title here in the list, and I can tell the patron, it looks like that request is shipped, so it's en route to my library, and it should be here for you to pick up soon. Now, if you have a lot of requests here, you can use these search functions at the top of each column to filter down your list of requests. So let's say, again, I am looking for an update on that Frozen title. I can type in the title into the title search box, and it should limit down my list of results to just ones that match the term I entered. Now you notice here that it's really wanting you to enter in your title or your search term the exact way that you see it listed here. So for patron, for example, it's last name, comma, first name. For the title, it wants you to enter all of the terms in the exact correct order. However, you can use your wildcard symbol as a truncation symbol. So you can use that to, again, if you know maybe their first name, not their last name, you can make use of that wildcard to help bring up the correct results. So again, if you need to give your patron an update, you can use this report to quickly find their request and give them a quick status update. Going through a list of requests for statuses that you might run into. Received is the status that patrons will, or that you will see when a request has arrived at your library. So usually when you see a status of received, that means the item is either on the hold shelf for the patron, waiting for them to pick it up, or the patron has the item checked out. So probably you won't get too many questions on requests that have been received already. Complete requests, they're done. So you received the item, the patron checked it out, you sent it back to the owning library, and the whole cycle is finished. Pending requests, those are requests where ShareIt is still waiting for a lender to pull an item to fill that request. So it's been put on someone's pick list, but they just need to pull it and then ship it to you. So this is kind of a waiting status. Shipped is it's in transit to you, so should be arriving shortly. And then canceled, of course, means either the patron or a staff member has canceled that request. So I'm going to pause here and see if there are any questions.
We had a question.
So Joanne, yep, I see it. So Joanne asks, is there a priority that the lending library is close to the borrowing library? That is a great question, Joanne. And yes, we actually have preferred borrowers set up in ShareIt. The preferred borrowers are those borrowers that are on our delivery route. So first, ShareIt will look at those libraries again that are in the same delivery hub as ours, just to kind of minimize in transit time. And if none of those libraries have a copy available, then it will go out to any other Find More library. So yes, there is some prioritization happening on the back end. And let me know if I didn't answer your question, but I hope I got that one right. All right, any other questions? Okay, perfect. Glad to hear that, Joanne. Okay. So that was sort of what happens on ShareIt when you place a request. I did quickly want to mention kind of what happens when a Find More item actually arrives at your library. So when a Find More item arrives at your library, it will arrive through your library through the Rails delivery bins. So again, all of these items that are going back and forth are going through Rails delivery. We're not using external vendors like UPS or FedEx to ship materials. Rails is taking care of all of that, which is great because then there's no cost to shipping things back and forth. So when an item arrives at your library, it will have a Find More Illinois shipping label attached to it. That will be kind of a visual cue for staff processing your delivery bins that this item is for Find More. Those items will also likely have Find More Illinois spine label tape attached as well. So again, we've got kind of those two visual cues that items arriving at your location are for Find More holds. When those items arrive at your library, they will be given to interlibrary loan staff to process. Those staff will receive the items and ShareIt, and we go over that workflow in our interlibrary loan training. When the items are received in ShareIt, they'll be marked as ready for pickup on the Polaris end, and Polaris will automatically send a notification to the patron. The patron will then come into the library to pick up their request. They will check it out, and when they're done, they'll bring it back to the library. Staff will return the item and share it, and then again, it's going to go back on its way through Rails delivery to that lending library. So the process is very streamlined, very smooth, and hopefully, again, it will be really useful to your patrons. So I'm going to pause again. That brought us to the end of the demo, but we're happy to demo again, something that you might have questions on, or just take any questions that might have popped up. I'm going to pause here and see if there's something the group would like us to go over again or clarify. Okay, I don't see any more questions in the chat. But if you have more questions, feel free to stay on and we can, yes, one more question. I knew there was at least one more. The question is, can a patron return a Find More Illinois item to another CCS library? That is a good question, Pat. Ideally, the patron would return the item to the library that requested the material on their behalf. That will really help streamline the process from the share it side. If a Find More Illinois item is returned to your location and your library looks and share it and you do not find this item, you can always, one, just send it back to the owning library, just like you would do, you know, for any item that was incorrectly returned to your location, or you can contact CCS and we can do a little bit of digging to see which library had placed that request for their patron. So hopefully that won't happen very often, but again, you have kind of two options. You can send it back to the owning library through Rails delivery, or you can just go ahead and you can call CCS or open a ticket, and we'll do a little bit of research to find out where this item should go to next. All right, well, if you have questions, again, feel free to stick around and we can walk through them. Otherwise, thank you so much for attending our webinar today. We look forward to training all of you on Find More Illinois in the coming months. If you have questions once we're wrapped up here, feel free to send them on to help@ccslib.org, and we, Kiara or I, will get to those questions and help answer all of your questions that you have. So thank you all so much for coming. Take care, and we'll see you soon.